There's a moment that stops you every time it happens. You are standing in your yard, not doing anything special, not holding food, not making any particular effort, and a bird lands 2 feet from you. Maybe on the feeder while you are still standing next to it. Maybe on the arm of your chair. Maybe on the ground so close to your foot that you could reach down and touch it. And you go completely still, because you understand instinctively that something has just happened that does not happen to everyone. You are right, it does not. The bird that lands close to you has not made a mistake. It has not confused you for something else. It has not lost its fear instinct. It has done something far more specific and far more deliberate than any of those things. It has made a decision about you, a decision built from weeks or months of careful observation, and the decision is that you are safe. What we are going to talk about today is how that decision gets made, what a bird is actually measuring when it watches you in your yard, what crosses the threshold from stranger to trusted presence, and why the birds that let you get close are not just being friendly, they are telling you something precise about who you have become to them. Welcome back to Backyard Bird Mind. Subscribe before you leave, because what you are about to discover will change the way you move through your own yard. Today we are going into the science of bird trust, what it is, how it is built, and what it means when a wild animal decides you are worth letting in. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover is the one that most people never realize, and it reframes every quiet moment you have ever shared with a bird in your yard.
Number 1. A bird that lets you get close has been studying you for longer than you know. The first thing to understand is the timeline, because most people think of trust as something that builds gradually over many interactions, and for birds that is true, but the scale is different from what you imagine. A black-capped chickadee has a home range of roughly 25 to 30 acres. Within that range, it makes thousands of observations every week about predators, about food sources, about other animals, about the humans it encounters. It is not reacting to each encounter fresh. It is maintaining a running model of everything in its environment, updating that model continuously, and making predictions based on accumulated data. When a chickadee sees you for the first time, it does not start from zero. It starts from a baseline of what humans in general tend to do, a baseline built from every human it has ever encountered in that territory. You begin as a data point in a category, potential threat, unknown. What changes that is behavioral consistency. Research from the University of Exeter on garden birds showed that birds respond not just to the presence of specific humans, but to the patterns of behavior those humans exhibit over time. A person who moves slowly and predictably, who does not make sudden gestures, who appears at the same times in the same places doing the same things, that person generates a pattern that the bird's brain recognizes as low risk. The unpredictable human, the one who sometimes moves fast and sometimes stops and stares, stays in the unknown category far longer. This is what the bird that lands near you has done. It has watched you move through your yard over days and weeks.
It has noted your pace, your posture, your predictability. It has compared you to every other human it knows. And at some point, the accumulated weight of consistent, non-threatening behavior crossed a threshold. The approach is not the beginning of trust. It is the conclusion of it. Number 2. The distance they keep tells you exactly where you stand. Every bird in your yard maintains what researchers call a flight initiation distance, the distance at which it will flush if something approaches. This number is not fixed. It changes based on the individual, the location, the predator history of the area, and critically, the specific animal or human doing the approaching. Studies on European garden birds published in the journal Animal Behavior found that birds in residential gardens calibrate their flight initiation distance to individual humans, not to humans in general. The same bird that flushed at 20 feet from a stranger flushed at 4 feet from the person who filled the feeder every morning. Same bird, same yard, completely different response based on who was walking toward it. What this means is that the distance a bird maintains around you is a live measurement. It is the bird's current assessment of the risk you represent, expressed in feet. A bird that lets you get to 6 feet has assigned you a threat level that most humans in your yard never achieve. A bird that lets you get to 3 feet has placed you in a category with very few other beings.
and a bird that lands on you, that bird has removed the flight calculation entirely. It has decided that the question of whether to flee from you is no longer relevant. You are not a threat to be monitored. You are part of the environment. Watch the distances in your yard. They are not random.
They are data, and they are being updated every single time you step outside. Number 3, what the bird is actually measuring when it watches you. It is not measuring your intentions. It cannot read your mind. What it is measuring is something much more concrete, and understanding what that is changes how you think about your own behavior in your yard. The primary signal birds use to assess human threat is gaze. Direct eye contact triggers a threat response in birds that is immediate and measurable. Researchers at the University of Exeter tested this by having people walk toward birds while either looking directly at them or looking away. Birds flushed consistently earlier when the approaching person made direct eye contact. The gaze alone, independent of speed or distance, elevated the perceived threat level. This is why experienced birders and wildlife photographers learn to approach animals using averted gaze, looking slightly to the side, never directly at the animal. The bird's nervous system reads direct eye contact as predatory intent. It is the same signal a hawk sends when it locks onto prey. The second signal is movement pattern. Straight line approach toward a bird is threatening. Curved, indirect movement, arriving near a bird by moving towards something else, is far less alarming. Birds that are comfortable around specific humans often tolerate much closer approach when that person is moving toward the feeder, toward the garden bed, toward anything other than the bird itself. The third signal is body size relative to posture. A person who crouches slightly, who makes themselves smaller, who lowers the height differential between themselves and the bird, that person registers as less threatening than someone standing at full height looking directly down. None of this requires theatrical performance. It requires awareness. Small adjustments to how you move in your yard, slower pace, averted gaze, indirect paths, accumulate into the behavioral signature that birds classify as safe. Number 4, some birds are individually bolder than others, and you may have found one. Not every bird in your yard has the same baseline temperament. Within any species, there is a range of individual personality, a concept that behavioral ecologists now take seriously after decades of research that initially seemed too anthropomorphic to pursue. Studies on great tits in the Netherlands, led by researchers at the Netherlands Institute of Ecology, documented consistent individual differences in exploratory behavior, boldness, and tolerance of novel stimuli that persisted across the lifetime of individual birds. Bold birds were bold at 6 months and bold at 3 years. Shy birds remained shy. The differences were stable, hereditary, and consequential. Bold birds colonized new food sources faster, but were also more vulnerable to predators. What this means for your yard is that some of the birds approaching you are not just responding to your behavior, they are also expressing who they are as individuals. The chickadee that lands on your hand the first time you hold seed out is probably a naturally bold individual, and it would be bolder than average with anyone who held out seed, not just you. But, and this is important, even bold birds calibrate their boldness to the specific human in front of them.
The bold chickadee that lands readily on your hand may not land on a stranger's hand. Boldness sets the ceiling. Your behavioral history with that bird sets where it actually lands. The bird that comes closest to you is both the boldest individual in your yard and the one that has accumulated the most evidence that you specifically are safe. Both things are true at once. There is something worth sitting with in that. If you have a bird in your yard that comes unusually close, that lands on the feeder while you are still touching it, that perches on the back of your chair, that hops toward you rather than away, you are looking at an animal that is doing two things simultaneously. It is being itself, expressing the personality it was born with, and it is expressing something it has learned specifically about you. The boldness and the trust are both real. Neither one cancels the other out. Number 5, what it means that the bird keeps coming back to you. Here is where the science meets something that is harder to put in a journal paper. Research on individual recognition in birds, from corvids to chickadees to garden songbirds, consistently shows that birds track specific individuals over time, not just categories, individuals. The Crow research from the University of Washington demonstrated this with faces. The Exeter research demonstrated it with behavioral patterns. The bird in your yard does not just know humans, it knows you. And knowing you means something. It means that the information it has gathered about you, your pace, your gaze, your predictability, your consistency at the feeder, is stored and applied specifically when you appear. Other humans get the default response. You get the updated one.
When a bird keeps coming back to you specifically, when it chooses the branch nearest to where you were sitting, when it returns to the feeder while you were still standing next to it, when it lands closer each time rather than the same distance, it is not doing something vague, it is doing something precise. It is choosing to be near you, out of all the available options in its territory, because the accumulated evidence has told it that near you is a good place to be. That is not a small thing. That is a wild animal making an active choice to close the distance between its world and yours, not because it has been tamed, not because it has lost its instincts, because it has used those instincts fully and carefully and arrived at you. Most people spend their whole lives outside and never have this happen, not because the birds are not there, because the conditions for it were never built. You built them, slowly, without knowing exactly what you were doing, by showing up consistently, by moving through your yard in a way that accumulated into a pattern, by providing food and water and cover over enough time that the birds in your territory updated their model of you from unknown to known to safe. The bird that lands near you is the result of all of that. Every morning you went outside, every time you refilled the feeder, every time you moved slowly and didn't startle them. That behavior compounded, and at some point it crossed a threshold that most humans never reach. That bird chose you, specifically, based on evidence, and it keeps choosing you every time it comes back. Tell me in the comments, how close has a bird ever come to you in your yard? Was it the first time it had done that? Or had it been getting closer for a while? I want to know the story.
I read every one. These are the ones I carry longest. I'll see you in the next one.